So the other day I was thinking about Shadows of War, you know, the Lord of the Rings game where
Shelob is now a super sexy woman with sexy lady parts.
everyone's favorite. A common critique for that game and for the entirety of Lord of the Rings video games is that they don't feel Lord of the Rings enough. I believe this is a byproduct of the gamifying that must happen when making an adaptation for the medium, and if gamifying is not a word that immediately clicks in your brain, here's an example. It's a clip from Kingdom Hearts 3 and how they interpret Pirates of the Caribbean.
My call! Here we go! I can't look! I enjoyed that!
If that clip right there doesn't explain everything, I don't know what will. That's some video gaming shit. Simply put, most Lord of the Rings games prioritize being a video game first and a Lord of the Rings experience second. And in a fair world, we could have both. Video games that use Lord of the Rings as set dressing to allow you to perform smoking sick sadistic combos, as well as almost academic fantasy novels about multicultural and environmentalism. But then I realized, if you really wanted a video game that so perfectly one-to-one recreates that Lord of the Rings feeling, the game you want exists. And it's called Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, Red Dead Redemption 2 is a Western. This means it has a pace that prioritizes a slow mosey, partner. It is a slow burn affair almost to the point of self-indulgence. All of this to say, it's fucking slow. Here is the average runtime of one Red Dead Redemption playthrough, and here is the runtime of the collective audiobooks of Lord of the Rings. Now that right there is what I call a time investment, brother. But more than exaggerated runtimes, Red Dead Redemption 2 is also a prequel, a work where going in, you know the fates of most of these principal characters. Part of the sell and part of design principle is the ability to linger. Throughout the entire game, you are painfully aware that these good times are not meant to last. You are existing in a dream, one you are ultimately meant to wake from. Clip of the ending of Lord of the Rings for no particular reason. Speaking of common critiques of Lord of the Rings that are stupid and bad, most of the literal what happens in Lord of the Rings is characters walking. Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of the largest and most expansive open-world games Rockstar have ever made with no fast travel system. This is not an oversight, rather a direct, pointed decision. Part of the text, part of intended play for Red Dead Redemption 2. Quiet moments of contemplation, simply walking through lavishly one-to-one recreated large swaths of this country that no longer exist. Whole areas paved over by urbanization. And that is one of the most Lord of the Rings descriptions I have ever heard. Tolkien was like a nature nerd and stuff. The books give equal weight and reverence to both horrid boglands, disgusting marshes infested with the corpses of falling soldiers, as they do to angelic mountains, the peaks of which have been kissed with snow. And the threat posed by Sauron and Saruman is not one merely to our principal characters, not merely a threat to the races of men, elves, dwarves, and hobbits, but to the land itself, a land being choked by the smog of industrial runoff. Lord of the Rings is in no small part about the violence of industry.
The old world will burn in the fires of industry. The forests will fall.
The trees are strong, my lord. Their roots go deep.
Rip them all down.
Come with fire. They come with axes. Gnawing, biting, breaking, hacking, burning.
What did you think those scenes were about, my guy? Speaking of walking barefoot through the forest like a hippie, or as I like to call it, exploring, Red Dead Redemption 2 is an exploration of the Western, of the American frontier. It analyzes the good, the bad, and why these archetypes still deeply resonate with us. A laser-focused dissection of one of the most highly mythologized eras of our nation's history. Lord of the Rings was written because Tolkien wanted to create a mythology for England. Really, all you have to do is replace fisticuffs with swordplay, gunslinging with archery, take the wildlife photographer side quest, turn him into a word for person who makes maps, and every time you run into him, he gives you a lore dump about the sons and daughters of Iluvatar or whatever, and yeah, you've got the most perfect Lord of the Rings game. And more than all of these thematic connections, I honestly believe the real human lasting message of both of these works is beautifully summarized in the best line in all of Red Dead Redemption 2. Because ultimately what Frodo and the whole Fellowship do is
take a gamble that love exists and do it lovingly.